Angel. Angel. Baby. Angel. Angel.
Sadly, in these days, the Catholic Church has undergone a lot of corruption and scandal. And Catholics have to deal with this, Catholics have to address this, and we can't shy away from it. What does it mean, though, as a Catholic to have to face corruption and scandal head on and keep their faith? That's what we're going to talk about today on Crisis Point. Hello, I'm Eric Sammons, your host and editor-in-chief of Crisis Magazine. Before we get started, I just want to encourage people to smash that like button, to subscribe to the channel. You can follow us on social media at Crisis Mag. Our website is crisismagazine.com, where you can subscribe to our email newsletter so you can check out what we're doing all the time. So our guest today, this has been, I feel like, almost a year in the making. We have not been able to connect, but now we finally are, which I'm very excited about. Michael Hitchborn, he's the president of the Lepanto Institute. He spent, before that, he spent 8 years at the American Life League's director of the Defend the Faith Project. He has researched and produced countless articles and reports on the funding of abortion, birth control, homosexuality, and Marxism by Catholic Relief Services and the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. He lives in Virginia. This is the most important stat here. With his wife and 7 children. That's what we care about the most. Michael? 8. Oh, I got an old bio here.
Yeah, you did. Our 8th was born in May.
Oh, congratulations. That's great. I mean, I love hearing that. So that's just such a blessing. So, Michael, you run the Lepanto Institute. Why don't you first just tell us what that is?
Sure. The Lepanto Institute was founded as an outgrowth of the kinds of investigations that I was conducting at American Life League. We were looking into organizations that were promoting abortion, contraception, homosexuality, and somebody had tipped me off and said, you might want to look into the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. And I said, okay. And I did, and I started to find some pretty serious problems. So we did a series of reports on that, and then I got a question in my head going, well, we found these problems with the CCHD, what about other ones like Catholic Relief Services? And I found serious problems there. So then my inquisitive mind went to Catholic charities and started finding problems there, and then Catholic hospitals and finding problems there. I found problems going all the way up to the Vatican with an organization called Caritas Internationalis, which is the international aid and development body run by the Vatican that oversees Catholic Relief Services, Cord Aid, Troker, KFOD, all the international aid and development agencies that belong to the church. The problem that I discovered is that Caritas Internationalis is on the governing body of an international communist organization called the World Social Forum. And when I say communist, I mean communist. We're talking, these guys parade through the streets with hammer and sickle flags, big banners of Karl Marx. I mean, they don't hide it. So as I was conducting these investigations, it became clear that my scope of investigations had kind of gone beyond the mission of American Life League, which was specifically American, specifically abortion. And we had a long conversation, and it was decided that I should just go ahead and start my own organization, which I did. And that's what the Lepanto Institute is. It's a continuation of the work that I was doing at American Life League. And it's we've expanded a little bit to at least say, hey, people like to give financial contributions to nonprofit organizations, to charity, real charity. And we thought, what if we put together a list of charitable organizations that people can donate to that aren't involved in all of this garbage, and with warnings for the ones that are, so that they say, hey, I used to give to this organization. I didn't know they were doing this bad stuff. And that's what we've done. We've put together a charitable reports list of about 100 charities or so, more now. I think we're up to 115, 120, that we have personally investigated, and we've found either safe or not safe.
Yeah. I want to get back to that in a minute, because I saw that on your website, and that is very useful. One of the things I'm interested in is, so like 20-some years ago, my wife and I were helping run a nonprofit that helped Catholics was adoption expenses. So we would help Catholics who wanted to adopt. It's very expensive to adopt a child in America, particularly upfront costs. And
Right.
these were families that could support a child, but they couldn't afford the initial. So we helped them out, and it doesn't exist anymore just because of various reasons. But I remember one time my wife was dealing with Catholic Charities, and a local Catholic Charities, about an adoption situation. And there was a single mother who wanted to adopt, and our policy was we're not giving assistance unless it is a mother and father, both, a stable family, Catholic family. And we only had so much money, we couldn't give everything. So we're like, no, we're not going to give to somebody who's a single mother. But Catholic Charities had contacted us about possibly helping out this lady. And we said, no, that's not really our mission. We're doing this. And the Catholic Charities lady, she just went off about how actually a single mom is better for raising a child because they're focused only on the child. They're not distracted by their husband. And so and it was just like, that was an eye-opener to me because I'd only been Catholic for maybe about 5 or 10, 8 years, something like that. And I knew there was corruption in the church, but it was still kind of like, and that was just like on the street level of how, just because it says Catholic in front of it does not necessarily mean it's promoting Catholicism. And so for me, like when you give your guys reports, I'm like, yeah, that's probably, that's unfortunate, and that's true and all that stuff. But I have to imagine a lot of people, like Catholics, challenge the veracity of your reports. So how do you go about making sure that because you're saying some pretty damning things about these organizations, how do you go about making sure that what you're saying is accurate and that you can back it up and things of that nature?
We have an extremely high bar for degrees of proof. We found all kinds of organizations that were entangled in things that we thought they really shouldn't be a part of, but we've never reported on them because we could not prove that they were directly involved in anything nefarious. There's a huge problem, and I think primarily in research circles today, where they get very involved in guilt by association. That's what we're accused of quite frequently, is guilt by association. And my response is, no, this isn't guilt by association, this is guilt by participation. Case in point, just earlier this week, we released a report on a CCHD grantee that we discovered held a staff meeting where they erected an altar with a pagan idol on it. They placed pentagrams on this altar, and then they recited prayers to demons. How do we know this? Because they wrote about it on their own website. And they said that this happened during a staff meeting. They even tweeted about it on Twitter, and they posted about it on Facebook. So we have various degrees of certainty that come from the primary sources, and that's the only way that we can show that this organization was doing something that was wicked. One of the ways that we're accused of guilt by association is because we talk about these organizations being involved with coalitions, where, for instance, there's a coalition called the Hispanic Federation, and it is super gay. That's the best way to describe it. We're talking rainbows and pixie dust. These people are queer as a football bat. And there are several CCHD grantees that are members of this Hispanic Federation. Here's the thing. The Catholic Campaign for Human Development actually has a specific grant guideline that says that CCHD grantees may not be members of coalitions that operate and do things that are against church teaching. So when we find these organizations that are members of these coalitions, our statement is not that this organization is promoting LGBTQ nonsense because they're a member of the coalition. We say they are violating the CCHD grant guideline because they're a member of this coalition which is doing X, Y, and Z. Furthermore, and this is one of the degrees that we try to maintain, we look to see if these coalitions have a membership where you have to pay a portion into that membership, and most of them do. So when these grantees are they're paying membership dues to be a part of this coalition, what that means is that whatever small amount of the Catholic funding that's going to this organization is also being doled out in some small portion to finance these wicked coalitions. So there is that direction that we take, but it's all primary sources. There's no secondary source. We don't go on rumor, and that's how we maintain the degree of our reports.
So the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, I think everybody had heard of it for a long time, but I don't think it's until you guys started reporting that all of a sudden we were like, oh wow, this does not seem good. So explain exactly what it is in theory, and why is it they keep on coming up in your reports?
So the CCHD was created in 1969. It was the brainchild of a guy named Monsignor Jack Egan, who happened to be very good friends with Saul Alinsky. And the Diocese of Chicago had collaborated with Saul Alinsky on several community projects. I think one of them was called the Back of the Yards Coalition or Foundation or something along those lines. And through these relationships, Jack Egan said, you know what? We take up all these collections. Maybe we could take up a collection for your community organizing group. And it called the Industrial Areas Foundation. And Saul Alinsky said, hey, that's a great idea. I kind of like that. So Jack Egan went to the Bishop of Chicago and said, here's our idea. And the Bishop of Chicago said, well, go ahead and take up a collection, see what happens. Well, they took up a collection. It was a large collection. It was very successful. Father Joseph Bernardin, then became the Secretary General of the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. And he took this idea of the Campaign for Human Development to the U.S. bishops and said, it was such a success in Chicago. We should take up a national collection to finance these community organizing groups. So that's what they did. And it was the most successful collection they ever conducted. Because people love to help the poor, and that's how it was sold to them. What they weren't told is that these organizations don't do anything to help the poor. They simply conduct political agitation for political change. And that's the whole purpose. It follows the blueprint that Saul Alinsky set in his book, Rules for Radicals. So the first collection was taken on the national level, I think, in 1972. And ever since that time, organizations that promote abortion, contraception, homosexuality, communism, have been found by intrepid reporters like Capital Media Research, I think that's what they're called, or the Capital Research Center. The Wanderer had conducted several investigations. They used to publish regular articles showing that these organizations were receiving funding from the CCHD, and they were exposing this. So that went on for a long time, but it was easy for them to sweep it under the rug because, well, when you have a newsletter or a newspaper that has a very small circulation, you're not going to get a whole lot done. It was the advent of the internet that changed all of that. So when we started doing our investigations in 2009, and we put out a news article, suddenly it gets picked up by Catholic News Agency, National Catholic Register, and then National Catholic Reporter scrambles and says, oh no, we got to defend our friends. And so they jump in and they start attacking me and saying, oh, he hates the poor, that's why he's doing this, and he's a capitalist. And well, aren't you kind of betraying yourself by saying that? But anyway, that's kind of the genesis of it. That's why our reports are most remembered, because the advent of the internet has given us a much broader platform and more people have been able to see and hear about the problems. So it's marketed as this is to help poor communities, but basically what happens is when you give money on your collection, what is it in November? When do they do the CCHD? Mid-November, every mid-November, yeah.
So when they do that, you put your money in there, and then it goes to, I guess, DC. They probably have an office there. And then they take all that money, and then throughout the year, they give grants to various organizations. Is that the way it works?
Sort of. So 25% of what each diocese collects remains with the diocese. The other 75% goes on to the National Catholic Campaign for Human Development. Then they take that money, and there's an grant application process that starts at the local level, goes to the national level, goes back to the local level, and then they disperse the grants, I think, in 2 rounds. So one covers the first half of the year, and then the other covers the second half of the year. From July to June of the following year is the grant cycle. That's the grant year.
Now, okay, so you even mentioned already that they have rules for who they give grants to, and it sounds like these rules actually there's some good ones. I mean, they don't want to give to organizations that are members of coalitions that undermine church teaching, but clearly the actual grants being given aren't always following those kind of regulations that they have. So why do you think that is? Do you think they just are sloppy, or do you think they kind of just don't care? I mean, at this point, they got to know they're going to get caught, and so why do you think that they keep on? Because this isn't like just they started this last week. It's been going on for years, and yet you just said that this lace. I mean, literally this week it just came out that this is still happening.
So there are many levels to the question. I think that there are true believers within the Catholic Campaign for Human Development who are just totally content to give funding to organizations that are pro-abortion, that are, advancing the LGBTQ agenda. I think that they're
unbelievers, more like it, right?
True unbelievers, yeah. And I know that there are individuals like that because we know of at least one CCHD grantee or a grants coordinator from up in New York who she has been a participant in the Democratic Socialists of America. So we know that goes on. There are some who are just naive. They're told from on high, look, we investigated this, everything's fine, don't worry about it. And there are bishops who are just left in the dark. Some bishops, when they finally see my reports as it hits their desk, they write me and they tell me, I had no idea. This is shocking. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And I've had bishops who actually stopped taking up the CCHD collection because of our reports. But then there are other bishops who will write me and say, you're all washed up, you're full of hot air, and I don't believe a word you're saying. We love the CCHD, we're going to continue funding them. Everything that you say is bogus. And I've been told by CCHD personnel that if a bishop wants an organization funded, even if they find something wrong with it, it gets funded. So there's that problem too. So it's a multi-layered problem. It comes from all sides.
So if a bishop, say just hypothetically, in Chicago, for example, so if the bishop there, let's just say, is like he likes a certain organization that violates a lot of their own grant procedures and regulations, but he says, I want these guys funded, and he contacts the CCHD, that essentially what you're saying is they will almost definitely then go ahead and give them a grant.
Yes. If the bishop wants it funded, it's going to get a grant.
Okay, so do you know if the donations each year, do they make it public how much they raise each year in their November fundraising that they do?
So the numbers aren't readily available. They don't tell us exactly how much they get in the collections. They tell us how much they budget for the various projects. So with the Campaign for Human Development, typically they give out grants ranging from $10 to $15 million a year, depending upon whatever. For whatever reason, that's generally the range of the budget. So it is interesting that we don't see any numbers regarding how much they take in the collection, only what they budget for on the other end of it.
They have to be getting money from somewhere else then, because there's no way they're raising $10 to $15 million from the pew collection. Do you think?
I wouldn't think so. Not anymore.
That's what I mean now. I mean, maybe maybe in their high point or something like that. But I can't imagine. First of all, I mean, people are just not donating hardly. There's less people in the pews, and then the few people who are left all know about the CCHD now from you. I can't. So, do you have any idea if they get money from somewhere else?
Well, I mean, money is fungible, and when you have to remember, the USCCB is classified as a religion according to IRS rules, which means they're not required to report any financial dealings except for when it comes to government grants. But when it comes to what they pull in from pew collections and how the money is used, they don't have to report any of that. All they have to do is budget for it. So it's entirely possible that they're pooling the resources from various budget items and just saying, we came up a little short over here. Let's shore up our end, and then we'll put a little bit more over on this end. And it could be just some very creative accounting. I don't know, because they're not telling us.
Okay, so they're not making that public. Because I have to imagine that the amount that they receive has gone down over the years considerably. But it sounds like they just keep on putting money out there. So that would be interesting if there's a way, if there's anybody who works there who wants to go ahead and contact Michael and let him know and has the numbers, please do so. Then he'll let us all know when that happens. So
I would love that.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. Yeah, I'm sure you would. Okay, so outside the Campaign for Human Development, I know there's some other organizations in particular that you have, I don't want to say targeted, but just kind of exposed is probably a better word. Those in Catholic Relief Services, isn't that one that's had some issues in the past?
Yes, and continues to have issues.
And what are some of the issues of Catholic Relief Services?
Well, I'll start with 2008, when Father Germain Griset was told that CRS had put out these flip books and this literature that was promoting condom use. And CRS vehemently denied, up and down, that they had anything to do with the promotion of condoms. And Father Griset, because of his stature, was able to obtain copies of these flip books that had CRS's logo right on them. And he turned around and he said, look, these were published by your people with the logo. You can't deny this. And finally, CRS said, well, there was a mistake that was made. We never really should have done this. And we tried to make it clear with this project that this wasn't really something that we were going to get involved in, but alas. So that was the start. As I have been investigating CRS, I've found they've given millions of dollars to organizations that themselves push contraception and abortion. They gave millions of dollars to Care International, millions of dollars to Save the Children, millions of dollars to Population Services International, which is, this organization is so bad. There's no way they should have ever partnered with them. This group, Population Services International, the title says it all, they're a population control organization, was created by a pornographer. It was created by a guy who created the Adam and Eve stores, if you've ever heard of those, which is basically BDSM paraphernalia, a sex store, a sex shop. This guy created that, and he uses the money from the profits of those stores to create Population Services International, and the purpose of Population Services International is to reduce the fertility rates of poor people. That's why they exist. So for CRS to partner with them indiscriminately, and they still do, they say, oh no, we've stopped partnering with them. I even asked a CRS guy once, I said, let me ask you this. If you were partnered with Planned Parenthood, or if Planned Parenthood said, hey, we want to help distribute mosquito nets, would you give them a grant? And he said, well, no, we would never do that. And I said, well, why not? And he said, because we look at the preponderance of the work of the organization that we partner with. So they're okay with partnering with organizations that are participating in abortion, contraception, and whatnot. Well, so that got me started looking into their actual grants, their actual projects. And I have found hands-on evidence. I worked with Steve Mosier at Population Research Institute back in 2015. We sent a researcher on the ground. The researcher was able to obtain all kinds of evidence to show that CRS itself implemented programs called Healthy Choices 2, which was all about the spread of contraception to young people. They implemented a program called Shuga, which was an MTV-produced TV series that was all about promoting condom use. And I even I filed a Freedom of Information Act request and got CRS's own documentation reporting, yes, we implemented this, we reached this number of people with this program. The same thing with Shuga and so on. So we had the receipts, and CRS's response was, well, we didn't do that.
Okay, so obviously Catholic Relief Services, they're a little bit sloppy, we'll say, about their who they're helping as well. And then did you say that you've had some investigations of Catholic Charities as well?
I did. I've conducted research into Catholic Charities, primarily when I was at American Life League. Father Larry Snyder, who was the head of Catholic Charities at the time, was heavily involved with an organization called America's Promise. And in this organization, he was helping to, I can't remember the specifics. This was actually quite some time ago. But it was Catholic Charities being financially involved with this group that was promoting contraception and promoting homosexuality and that kind of thing. We also found that Catholic Charities USA was an active member of USHRN, and I can't remember what the acronym stands for anymore, but that organization was actually involved in trying to lobby the government to be soft on abortion and to be soft on contraception. So it's, you know, there was that kind of thing that we found with Catholic Charities. One thing that I want to point out, back to CRS for a second.
Sure.
In 2020, we conducted a very broad range investigation into CRS, and I found Catholic Relief Services produced documents that were promoting condom use right there in their own documents with their letterhead. Oh, and by the way, it was on CRS's own website. We found that CRS was implementing a program called DREAMS, D-R-E-A-M-S. It is a PEPFAR-funded project, and CRS was implementing it. The primary purpose of DREAMS is to increase the preponderance of contraception use and to increase the contraceptive mix. In other words, don't just use a condom and the pill. Use a condom and the patch. So that was the stated goal of DREAMS. I went through CRS's documents related to what they were doing with the DREAMS project. In their own documentation, they said, yeah, we know that they're promoting contraception through this program, but we've carved out just this little section that we're involved with that allows us to, you know, get girls enrolled in it so that they can get financially secure. So we don't have anything to do with the contraception part, except you're enrolling girls in this program, and part of the purpose of the program, or part of the stated objective and rule of the program, is that everybody who's enrolled has to get every aspect of the program. And you knew that.
It's like saying, okay, I'm going to help enroll these people in a Satanist school. They have a good math program there.
Yes.
It's like, yeah. You know, okay, but you know, they get the whole thing while they're there, right? I mean, it's not like that's insane. I do think I see that seems to be the response often is, well, we're not supporting that part of it. We're supporting this other good part of it. Now, right. My question to you is, it seems like many organizations that help the poor do tend to have a pretty hard left position on a lot of stuff. And so are there organizations that exist that are solidly Catholic, or at least don't do, I mean, heck, a lot of Protestant organizations are probably better, you know, in some ways, that do help the poor, that you know, Catholic Campaign for Human Development could support, or Catholic Relief Services could support? Do they actually exist, or are they all pretty much terrible like this?
We actually have on our website a charity reports list. I think we're up to about 120 organizations that we have personally investigated. And we have them marked as either safe or not safe, so that people can see exactly what it is, where their money's going, what the organization